You're listening to Deliberate Living, a podcast that inspires, empowers, and encourages listeners to live life more authentically. My name is Holly Priestley, and I'm a full-time nomad and writer who has been living in my 1997 Ford van since January 1st of 2019. I travel the United States with my dog, learning how to live with more authenticity. I explore different ways people choose to ditch the prescribed life we've all been sold and live on their terms, finding freedom and happiness however they choose. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Deliberate Living podcast. I am your host, Holly Priestley, and this week we have my friend Rachel with us. She has been living out of her huge, ex-hotshot buggy on and off for 4.5 years, and it is a really, really cool rig, and it dwarfs mine in size, which is really exciting for me because, I got a high-top van, and I'm usually, kind of tall, and, it's a really big van until I'm parked next to you, and then I feel like a normal-sized car. So, hello, Rachel. Hi. For the people who don't know you personally and or aren't following you on Instagram, why don't you give a little bit of your background and how you got into Fred?
So I found Fred on Craigslist up in Northern California. I was in Scotland at the time, living and working on a remote island for about 6 months at an outdoor center. I had hit a wild boar with my Subaru about 2 weeks prior to leaving. So I took the total and was like, okay, I'll just find a new rig when I get back in the States. And so my partner at the time and I had talked a lot about moving into a van. He worked for the National Park Service. It just made sense. I was studying photography. I was gonna, had all these dreams. We'll get a van and go to the national parks, and that's what I'll live in while you go on your trail crew, and So that's kind of where it started. Right before I got back from Scotland, he was finishing his first tour in the Grand Canyon with the Conservation Corps, I believe, that year, and then he got hired at the Park Service. But so that was kind of the setup for it. I had the money to buy the home, and he was gonna support us on the road. We had this whole plan. And how plans go.
Yeah,
so,
the universe laughs.
The universe was totally laughing. When we found Fred, it was all of my savings, and I kind of just couldn't stop thinking about it. I called the people from Scotland. I totally got hustled for probably a few thousand more than it was worth. But he just had such personality, and I felt in my heart, I just know this is Fred. I had named him before I left, so I was not expecting a giant fire truck. It is a 1995 F800 F-Series. Some people call it a 750. It's not actually any of those, though, because they put a Dodge motor in it. It has a 5.9 Cummins for any of you spec people out there, but then it also has an Allison transmission, which comes from a Chevy, so it has the best of all of the rigs, the Ford chassis, the Dodge engine, the Chevy transmission, and a really giant box on the back to build a little house out of. So there was a lot of work that went into it, and it's been about 4.5 years of about 4 different builds. I'm looking for the next one. Yeah. So that's it just kind of happened. And I was looking to live on the road, and I work on a farm, so it's nice to just park it there. It all works out for my lifestyle to travel down to the Southwest every year, and
So you bought Fred in a relationship for the two of you to live and travel, and did you ever have your partner in Fred with you, or has it always been just you and Freckles? The dog. Freckles is the dog.
Freckles is my dog. Yeah, she's my 10-year-old Tucson special. We did. We lived in it for a season in Northern California when it was still just a steel box, and it rained on us from all the condensation. We couldn't get warm. We built this terrible platform bed. It was your first build. It's your first build. You think everybody does it. It's fine.
It's a learning process, the whole thing.
And then it was, this is fine with the dog and the flames, and but so the truck's still around and he's not. So there's, we can see what lasts. But yeah, I'm glad that I bought it with someone else in mind, because I think I would have gotten something much smaller, and I think that I would not be as happy. I really like the space.
Yeah.
How big it is, how many windows it has, how unique it is. I meet people because they're like, oh, that's a neat rig. I'm like, yeah, cool.
Yeah. Chat. Yeah, absolutely. When you first got Fred, I mean, you were not even in the freaking country, but was there a part there, like at the beginning, maybe before you bought him, or like right after, that you were kind of like, oh shit, what have I done? That's all of your savings in this huge,
for a blank
metal box.
A blank signed title, nonetheless, from some boys who were writing out the registration. I was very worried about registering it, but it all went off without a hitch, so I was okay, it's just nicely registered in my name, so it's totally fine. But it was very, like, I remember that night at my sister's, sitting at dinner, and everybody's just kind of chatting, and I'm just staring there at, like, the middle of the table, like, oh my god, all I have is a set of keys and a piece of paper. And my dad has to go drive it, because it was terrifying when I test drove it, because it's so big. And it's a manual. It has 10 speeds. It's a split 5 gears. And it's very intimidating to drive, and I was convinced I couldn't drive it, and then my boyfriend drove it, and I was like, I can drive this better than you. And that's kind of, I mean, he encouraged me to. He's like, no, Rachel, you can drive this, like, you need to do it, because you keep complaining about my driving, like, so you need to do this. But yeah, that moment, that, oh shit, what have I done? Like, that was a back road in southern Humboldt. I don't know if people are familiar with the area, they'll laugh, because it was cash, and it was like, oh my god, like, did I just, like, I mean, yeah, they hustled me for a few thousand, but fortunately I now have the truck, and yeah, that was just my own learning curve. Always negotiate.
So when you and your partner split up then after a season in the truck, did you have any kind of like, maybe I should get rid of it, maybe it's too big for me, maybe I don't want to drive it because it's huge and scary, or was at that point where you just like, oh no, this is home, like you can leave, but this is mine?
Yeah, it was pretty much, I'll never forget the conversation. I was just exasperated. We were fighting over the truck a lot, like how to build it was very, like, neither of us were skilled in building things. I had a little experience, but I mean, come on, like, I did not know nobody really knows what they're doing. Some people are just a little bit better at figuring it out, right? We were not figuring it out, and also the communication about figuring it out. It was just, like, I just feel like a lot of our problems are about the truck. Like, I feel like if I, like, something about, like, well, should I just sell the truck? And he's like, I think it would really help. And I kind of snapped back, I'm not selling my fucking truck. And
so your real feelings, like, kind of came out in a moment of, like, heat.
Yeah, totally. And it was very clear that, it was all of my money. I bought a truck for our home, but it was my truck. Yeah. And there was definitely some heartache in that, and there was a lot, like, there was a lot of on my side too. Like, it wasn't working, and the truck made it clear that, like, oh no, this is not actually the relationship that we should be in, and so now there's enough room for somebody else if they're if that
or
comes
not
along.
just all
or
of
not.
your space,
I mean,
and guests,
right? Totally, that's what I more mean as a guest, or like being able to host. I had dinner in there
last night. It was great.
It was lovely.
Would do again.
That's great.
I think that much like the pandemic forced a lot of people to, like, be really close with your significant other for a very long time, and a lot of relationships aren't necessarily built to do that. I feel like living in a vehicle, living on the road, even like trying to do digital nomading and like travel the world with like Airbnbs and stuff, I feel like those kinds of experiences, like those kinds of environments, really like put the pressure on your relationship, and it like magnifies all of the good stuff, and it magnifies all the bad stuff, and so it can be a really good like litmus test for couples to be like, is this right or not? So I wouldn't necessarily think that's like a bad thing,
no,
like
it definitely it was, and that's what I realized is, like, it's not about the truck. I'm not getting rid of the truck. That won't fix it. This is clearly like we're not as on the same path as we thought we were. We are wanting different things at this point. So it was very like, yeah, I mean, it was pre-pandemic. This is about 4 years,
Right.
3 years ago is when we really split. So it's definitely been a while, but it's, you know, part of the origin story of the truck for sure. Because he was the one
Yeah.
who sent me the article. My dad and him were doing a lot of Craigslisting. He was waiting for me up in Humboldt. I had like 2 weeks left in Scotland, and his season was done. So they were trying to find a vehicle, and
Right.
he was sending me some, and he sent me this one. And he's like, "But that's crazy, right?" And I'm like,
Nope.
That's the one.
Mhm.
Like, I'm shaking that, but
Mhm.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
definitely part of that origin story.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you think you have most, I know this is kind of a rabbit hole question, but how do you think that you have most grown or developed or like learned about yourself in the last 4.5 years, or maybe just the last like 3 years doing it by yourself? What do you think are like the biggest areas that you've grown?
I would say in cooking for myself. There are still days that I don't, because
Yeah,
it's
I have
really
those
hard
days.
to cook for one.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad sometimes.
It's easier to cook for two, just like
Yeah.
quantity wise.
Yeah,
So you better like leftovers.
And I've embraced leftovers. I have very much embraced leftovers. So that's definitely a thing. And I think that you're thinking of some more deeper things than that.
No,
but
I want to know. I mean, it's different for everybody, right? Like, I've learned so much more about vehicles than I ever knew before.
Totally. Okay,
like,
yes.
I still don't even like know that much about cars, but I know so much more than I did before, and like that's just a logistical thing. Like, I know how to build shelves, not well, but I know how to build shelves.
They're holding your books right now.
They haven't fallen down yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't think that you can go through this kind of experience without like learning a lot of good logistical things as well as like, you know, those deeper emotional things.
Totally. I think, yeah, the truck has really more just provided a stable space. I have lived in more houses than I am years old. I think that is kind of not everyone in the van life, but I think it's a good solution for people who just find themselves moving their stuff all the time, and they like want to be in different places all the time. That like, why don't I just take all my stuff with me all the time?
Yeah.
And then I don't have to like put down a deposit, make sure I like the neighborhood, like, you know, and they're
make sure
you know
like
trials.
the neighbors or the roommates or
then you get to choose your own neighbors, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's I think I've gotten much better at dispersed camping. I mean, I always had a knack for it in my Subaru, but it is different with the truck because there are just different limitations with the weight and the size of it is pretty big. I stay away from cliffs. I stay away from high risk roads. High risk roads
stay away from cliffs. I mean, that's valid.
High risk roads are narrow cliff roads.
Gotcha.
Those are the ones that I will like not even be like, you know what, that's why I need a Suzuki Samurai to tow behind my truck. But it's definitely, there are some really scary places that I just can't take my truck that I could have taken my Subaru. But I traveled around in an outback for years of just car camping with my dog, just me and her. So.
Oh yeah, I had an Impreza hatchback.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Prior to the van, and that was great. I'm not a very big person, so that was like a good size for me.
It definitely feels safer and smaller, you know, more like normal vehicles that are meant for those kind of roads than, I mean, I know my truck is meant for back roads, but there also would have a 10-man fire crew in it that could rebuild the road if it was necessary. So I definitely try and stay, like, I know that to get myself out of somewhere is not as easy as it would be for the original crew that drove this truck.
Yeah, I mean, there's one of you.
Yeah.
Not 10 of you.
Right.
So that makes it a huge difference.
Yeah.
How do you go about, like, building that kind of community? Like, you clearly don't want 10 people living in your truck. No. But, you know, like, there is a sense of, not, like, loneliness, but, like, being alone, and there's a difference between the two, and being alone is not bad, loneliness is not bad. But like building community on the road when you do travel so much, or like especially with a fucking pandemic, like making everything challenging. How do you go about like meeting people and making friends and determining like who's worth camping with or who's worth like driving across the state to see, or things like that? How is that
Trial
developed?
and error.
Yep.
I did have a kind of a funny van date that was like, it wasn't a vibe, and I pulled up and we hung out for a little bit outside the rigs, and he kind of like asked me when I was moving along. I was like, oh, I thought we were gonna hang out for the evening, maybe have a campfire, not, spend the night with each other, but like, respectively in our rigs in the same spot. But it was very clear that I was like, nope, okay. And then there are people like, I met up with you like, hey, I'm gonna come out for a campfire, and we sat over on the campfire way longer than we thought we would because we hit it off, so trial and error. I am also a very solitary person. I like my space. I like being alone because I get more done.
That's how I am.
And when I hang out with people, I then get really tired for about a full day afterwards, and I will sleep for like a full day. Because I work 8 months of the year, and this is my 4 months off, so I am allowed to sleep all day. I don't have anything, and so, but I like to do things. I have little projects of art and writing and reading, and just all the little things that we put aside for work time and we save for our off time. And when I hang out with people too much, I lose that, and I feel like if I'm only either sleeping or hanging out with people, I need to do something for me.
For me, it's like creating.
Yes.
Like it doesn't, there's so many forms that can take, right? Like I can write, I can do photography, I can knit, I can work on the podcast or like other videos or, other writing projects or whatever. But yeah, when I'm around other people, I really just want to be around the people, but then I get like tired and I haven't made anything, and the making is like what gives me energy, as well as just like silence and alone time and like, not being able to like see any neighbors. And
I've definitely not been reaching out in the community. I have started to on Instagram more for like building future networks of people, like, maybe we're not in the same area right now, totally fine, I'm not looking to go, I need to go travel with you. Why don't we like keep watching each other's stories, and when they're in the same place, let's have a campfire, let's chat about our travels, and maybe swaps pins, like people swap cards, like it's
you should check out this spot the next time you're in that area.
Oh, have you been here? Having those conversations, but then like going again on my own. Like I definitely, ships in the night. Let's have a glass of whiskey and chat, and then like let's keep going, and then I'll find you on the next round, or maybe we meet up here, and then we meet up in, southern Utah, and then we meet up in Northern California, and we get to like reconnect in all of these spots, but it's not like
it's not a full-on like caravan.
I'm not caravanning. Yeah, I definitely have never actually done a caravan. I would be interested in it.
Caravans can be a lot of fun.
I'd like to do that down to Baja. That would be a caravan to Baja would be. I've seen them going on this year, and it was really hard not to join. But I'm definitely staying more local, and kind of I don't want to interact as much with that much of the public. So
I've been
next year
a lot more like private this year, just with COVID and stuff, and then not like I'm a pretty solitary, hermity kind of person.
It's kind of an excuse.
But, but also, like, I didn't go to RTR this year for the first time in, 3 years.
And that is something you want to do.
And that's something that, like, I wanted to do, but I also didn't feel, like, I know I've been being safe, and I know, like, a couple of the people who were there had been being, like, safe, because I know them personally, but then, like, there were people there that I didn't know, and, you just get, like, even if we're all being safe, we all have to stop and get gas and groceries, and it just didn't really seem like a good idea, and it wasn't, I don't know, the whole pandemic is
it's difficult to navigate. There's
and
no
everyone,
one
like,
way to do it.
Feeling safe is like a spectrum, like what it takes for you is different than what it takes for me, and so just didn't go this year, but like I'll meet up with like you, or like we've got Ashley with us as well, like 1 or 2 other people, and Logan's usually with me, but like, like a couple of people at a time, and then we'll have like our space for like a week or 2, and then we'll like meet up with a couple of people, and then we'll have our space for a week or 2. We're not doing huge caravans this year, but we are still using, like you said, like Instagram to meet other people and like kind of forge those relationships. and as you bop along, and you can like cross paths and meet along the way.
Yeah.
And then you said that you had a date the other day. Was that like through Tinder or like Bumble?
It was
Hinge?
What
was it? We
Tinder.
need to know.
It was through Tinder. And then we quickly moved to chatting on Instagram because I was like, oh, you actually have an interesting account. He's got a dog. He's gonna hike the AT or Arizona Trail. The AZT. Yeah, not the AT. The AZT. Which I'm very curious about. It's the one through hike that I think that I might actually be able to kind of start with. I hear that it is,
I've been considering it as well.
You don't have to carry as much until you get to the canyon. Like, you get a town every 3 or 4 days. Yeah. So it's not as, heavy. You don't have to have as heavy of a pack, which I think that would be a nice one to start with. But, yeah, wait, what was the question?
Using apps.
Oh,
to,
the
like,
app,
meet
right.
people
I got
to
distracted
date.
thinking about going on the Arizona Trail. I was like, oh, is this what we're talking about now? Anyway, so, yeah, he was cool to chat with, but it wasn't a vibe. And I haven't done a lot of them because I do move, like, I'm like, oh yeah, I was in Phoenix, but now I'm in Tucson, and now I'm going to the Mojave, and now I'm gonna go to Utah. It's like...
So trying to meet people can be, like, you have to just time it right. It's like ping pong, is that what no, pinball.
Pinball, yes.
It's like pinball, because you will come back, but you don't exactly know when
it's
or like how you're gonna it's very it can be very like pinball, but
I'm mostly on it to find other people van lifing and schoolies and traveling road people because then they're like, oh yeah, it's totally normal just to pull up to your campsite and say hi and be cool with driving away if it's not what you want. I mean, I definitely, I have my dog Freckles is a, pretty big, 60-pound. She can have an aggressive bark, like, so I think I'm a little less hesitant to be like, yeah, come out and meet me in the middle of nowhere. Like, some people are like, what the heck? Like, that's not safe, and I don't actually recommend it unless do
as I say, not as I do.
Like you have to really know yourself and your boundaries and your vibes and be like I have definitely I don't know, like a kind of headstrong, like, no, this is fine, but I have walked away from places or had people say like, no, it's time to go, but I fortunately have never encountered a stalker or I'm pretty assertive and kind of, I don't lead people on in a way I think that invites that, but some people don't mean to invite that or don't know what invites that, so
right, and some people don't give a fucking shit if you're trying to invite it or not. They're just gonna do what they're gonna do.
Totally. And so always be safe, always tell somebody that you're meeting a stranger.
Make sure somebody has your location.
Yep, absolutely. Or meet in a public at a park. Go both park at Himmel Park in Tucson or whatever is a great one. Like where you can both park the rigs and chat and say hi, but there are other people around, and then you can decide if you want to go out and disperse camp from there. I'm kind of a weirdo. I think I'm a little reckless. I'm sorry. Please do not follow my example. I do not want that to lead.
Some people are more risk-averse about certain things than others, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that, like, moving into a van, a lot of my sticks and bricks people in my life were like, you're giving up having, like, a house? Are you going to, like, store your furniture anywhere? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to sell it all. Like, if I need a house again, I'll just buy
more
back.
furniture.
But it felt to them, like, very risky and reckless to, like, get rid of any sort of like foundation, right? And
I kept
move
a storage
unit. And move into the van. But then after I'd been in the van for maybe a year, one of my close friends was living in Denver and working in Denver and didn't really do a lot of driving. Like, she lived on the light rail and she would just take that to work every day, and and that was what she did, and it was cool. It worked for her, and she lived in an area where that was a good idea and a good option. And then she told me that she was getting rid of her car, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing getting rid of your car? That is so risky. What if you want to go? And then so I had this like, what are you doing? And then it took me like another like day or two, and then I was like, oh, this is how people feel
when I like
about
my
lifestyle. And I was like, that is so interesting, because to me, like, having a car at all times, I would never not have a car, because like driving means a lot to me, and driving is a security thing for me. And like driving, like, I have a dog. What if she needs to go to the vet and I can't like put her in all the Ubers, like there's just like so many things that like having a car to me is like security, and having a house to some people is like security. But it took my friend getting rid of her car for me to realize how other people felt. Yeah, and even before that though, but so anyway, living in a van or a hotshot buggy can seem like a huge risk to people, but you know, we all have different things, and like having somebody come meet you out in the desert, you know, if you haven't met them before and you're going on a date and dispersed camping, like that can be risky for some people, but for others it's not.
Yeah, and also though, I will say, like, going through the dating apps makes me feel a little safer because there is a trail. There is like a conversation, and I always recommend before you actually meet someone to keep it on those platforms where they're traceable, because they could, if you like end up coming up missing, they can see who was the last person to go meet you in the desert, you know. So it's kind of like couch surfing. That was always my rule on couch surfing, is that you keep it to couch surfing because it's a monitored platform, and that is the safety feature of it. That's why it's okay for people to go meet up with strangers, is because there is a trail of like what was said and what led up to any, you know, malplay that would happen.
Airbnb is very similar. I don't think they allow you to even like exchange numbers or anything like that. Yeah, they want to keep it on the platform for a lot of liability reasons. So that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's it's fun. I like it. I don't know. It's fun to just kind of get out there sometimes and be like, yeah, what's this about? Like, oh, no, okay. See ya. Like,
this doesn't work.
Yeah, that's the great thing about having your house with you. You can just leave. You don't have to pack up anything.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you got to pack up a few things because your house will go, everything will go flying.
Well, that's true. I don't need projectiles.
It's so much easier. You mentioned earlier that you work seasonally and you know, that you probably paid too much for the rig and all of that. So why don't we talk a little bit about like what your work looks like, what that schedule is like logistically, but then also like the numbers, like how much did you pay for Fred, and like are you able to financially sustain your lifestyle doing what you do? And let's talk about some of that so that people know another way to make it work. Yeah. Because you and I have very different ways of making it work financially. Very different. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So I do seasonal work on a legal cannabis farm. Plug for Emerald Queen. We love Emerald Queen. They are kind of forefront of the cannabis community in Humboldt. They are doing a lot of legislation and action in the community to make it a viable industry that focuses on health and safety of not just the farm, but the community at large. So I'm really on board with them. I grew up in Humboldt County, so it is like, you know, if you've seen Murder Mountain, those are, you know, real, but it's nice to be a part of something that is completely legitimate and awesome and doing good things for the community and, you know, their own property at large. They have forest management plans, you know, like them being legal is just huge because I've been in the industry for a very long time, off and on, seasonally, not as long of seasons as I'm doing now, but it's just, they're doing really great things, and they've invited me back from April to December this year, and that is I make a full year's salary, for, you know, a single lady with no kids. It's totally plenty. The truck itself cost me $15,000. I have put probably about $17,000 into it for various builds that have not worked. The build I have currently is fine if it was not long term, but I'm looking to do this for the next 5 to 10 years to find my own piece of land. So my idea recently is to build out a really beautiful home and then go find a piece of land to put it on. So I am looking for a company currently to do this big, beautiful build for me. I'm going to do a few different bids. I'm giving it a year's worth of time before I expect it to be done or even started. I, you know, really want to take the time to do it right because this is a viable pattern for me. I work 8 months and then I get to go travel wherever I want for 4 months and I don't get bored. The farm has a really lovely rhythm with the seasons. There's the soil work and the planting, and then you do all the pruning, and then you go into harvest, and then you do it all again for another 3 months, and then you clean up the farm, and then you go have vacation, and then you come back. It's like better than a school teacher because I don't have to deal with kids. Not deal with kids. I'm sorry. I teach our children to be good, amazing people. That's a huge responsibility, and it's very nice that I don't have that, but I still get my 4 months off a year. But it is hard work. They let me do as much overtime as I want, and not really pulls in what I need to. But I mean, it's 10 to 12 hour days. 10 out of 14 day, 2-week periods. Like, I don't take
Yeah.
a day or two off every couple of weeks. Like, I buckle down on the farm. Then I get to come enjoy the sunshine out here. So, and they're a really fun farm. We'll take river trips. We'll do, there's a cool, like, paintball field out there on one of the neat little river kind of areas. But yeah, so it makes it so I can kind of disconnect. Like, I don't have to be looking for cell phone service. I don't have to get a booster. It's nice to have service, but I don't it doesn't dictate my travel.
Right. Yeah. I think that's really interesting, and a super great way to do it. I've interviewed a couple of people for the show who do seasonal work in whatever capacity. There's all kinds of seasonal jobs out there, so you can find something.
I could come down here and bartend in the winter because this is the winter. The winter season in the Southwest. You could get whatever job, and now weed's legal down here, so I could probably get a job in the industry when it's booming down here, and then go back. So
if you ever needed to like really buckle down and like save up a bunch of money, maybe to buy your property or whatever. I mean, you have that option, and having options is.
And I don't have to sit in the snow up there to make money year round. I can just drive down here and get the next season's work. So yeah, I really like following this season. I think it's interesting for our circadian rhythms. I find a lot of happiness in it. It really just feels good. I don't know.
Yeah.
Chase those feel goods.
Yeah, I think that is huge, and like what feels good is different for everybody, but having this lifestyle lets you pursue it a little bit more or experiment with it a little bit more. You try something and it doesn't work, then don't do it. If you go someplace and you don't like it, don't go back.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, then you find what you like, who you like, what you like to do, and you get to do more of those things. So what do you think are the biggest like cons to the lifestyle? Like, these are so many pros. There's so many pros to living in Fred, and having your seasonal work, and you love who you work with. I've heard a ton about it, so I know that it's true.
It's fun. They're good people up there.
But like, there's cons with any lifestyle.
Yeah. The ability to form a relationship, a meaningful relationship. I've had, flings here and there. Oh yeah, I was here for 3 months, so we, dated, and now we're friends and come back and say hi. But it's not, I think the con is that I think it's going to be much more difficult to find that like long-term life partner that I would eventually love to have, because I'm not seeking it. I am kind of living where I'm doing what I'm doing. And I would like to find somebody on the same trajectory, so that's actually very difficult when you move a lot. So that would be a con, is that it's definitely harder to try different relationships with people beyond, a good friendship, because you don't know when you're gonna be back.
Well, and even if somebody lives on the road,
you don't know if you're going the same way.
Right, you would think that it would be really easy for road people to caravan, right? To camp together, to go the same directions. And it's actually like,
it doesn't, I haven't found
just
it.
just as hard to like connect with your friends or like a potential, romantic interest, as it is like, when you're stationary and everybody like lives in different parts of town and like has different jobs and stuff. Like, it's not necessarily, you'd think it would be easier, but it's not. Yeah. Like, just because you both live in rigs or something.
Totally. And I think, and that loneliness factor, like I think, besides that one kind of failed date that didn't last more than us like chatting outside the rigs for an hour or something, you and Logan have been the only people I've met up with down here that I didn't already know from my time living in Tucson. Yeah. And so it can be like, sometimes I'm like, I reach out to people and they're like, yeah, but I'm going this way, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going that way. Okay. But so it's
and your head's strong enough that you don't want to just be like, well, I'll change my plans and I'll come meet you because you want to go do what you want to do. That's why we do this.
Exactly. And then, another con is like when your rig falls apart and, you go down that nice dirt road, that not so nice dirt road, and you come out and your bed doesn't close anymore, and your drawer is on the floor, and you're like you didn't get the locks, and you didn't you forgot to close your water tank, so you lost half your water supply, because my water tanks are on top of my truck and they're gravity fed, so if I leave a valve open to get the gravity, the airflow through it,
Oh, man.
As soon as I go up a hill, I can see in my review mirror, like, oh, no, I forgot. And I'll pull over. Or, like, when my cabinet door swings open in rush hour traffic in Phoenix.
Falls out.
Fortunately, the stuff in the side boxes don't fall out, but the doors do swing out into traffic.
Oh, those boxes. I thought you meant the inside boxes.
No, so I have tall side boxes,
Yikes.
and sometimes if they're not actually latched and locked, I have had a couple of them open in traffic.
And I have terrifying.
The last one was just recently going through Phoenix, and it was like wall-to-wall traffic, and like we're moving traffic, probably 30-40 miles an hour, and I'm having to get from like the middle lane all the way over to like 3 lane, still giant
so
6-8 lane. It was, and then getting back on the freeway, it was like, oh my god.
Oh, man.
So, there's those little frustrations, or, when I spill a glass of water on my floor, and I'm like, wow, that just went all in the cut, because my build is not complete. We'll just put it nicely that way. It is not complete yet, and there are just some, I think the con is really, to really figure out your life systems. Like, you really have, like, your life flow, I guess. People have their workflow, they have their workflow stations. Yep. And it goes from here to here to here, and it makes sense, and it's streamlined, and it works every time. You gotta find that for your truck, or your van, or whatever you're living in, your house, even, your life flow. Otherwise, it's like, you can't find things, and so, I think one of the cons right now is that I don't have that quite going yet. I'm getting better every day, but after 4.5 years, I'm, it's still a struggle. So, I don't know. Those are pretty much, like, the con is, like, getting it wrong while you're trying to figure it out. Yeah. Because that just sucks. But it's great when you do, so it could be a pro. And then, kind of balancing, like, loneliness with solitude and recharge, and having to figure that out. But that's actually I don't know. The cons are kind of pros in some ways. It just depends on situationally and, like, kind of your attitude for the day. Like, it's like, did I clean my floor or did I ruin my floor? Like, when you spill water, then you get to mop.
It's a little bit of both, probably.
Right. So, yeah.
Well, so we know you have some future plans to rebuild your rig so that it is a really good, very long-term solution for you. And we know that you're going to be heading back up to Humboldt to work on the farm this year. What other kinds of future plans do you have for Fred, yourself, Freckles? Over the next, 5 to 10 years, what do you got going on?
Pretty much it. Take care of them real nice, do my oil changes and my Zerk fittings. Excuse me, and just keep doing it till I have enough money to buy a piece of land and set him on some blocks, or not, if he's still going, that would be great. I'm trying to take care of him well enough, cool. And then build myself my own little homestead on whatever piece of land I find. But I think that this rhythm with the farm and the travel and the good people, and I'm totally, because I don't pay rent, like, I am saving how much people, like, last year, my first, full year working on this farm in the capacity that I am in this truck, that I literally saved the exact amount for rent. Yeah. Which is roughly like 10 to 15,000. I'm now blowing it this 4 months because it's so much fun that I have, I'm like, fine, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can just fill up my fuel tank, I can drive 2 hours to this next spot because I have all this saved. And it's really, I do not make enough to have a house at this point. There is room for growth in the company for sure. And I've only been with them 2 years. This will be my 3rd year. But it's, I don't blame people who can't save at all, even to get into this lifestyle, because you're paying rent. Yeah. I lived in Scotland for 6 months not paying rent when I worked at that center. So that also helped me. They didn't pay me, actually. So I don't know. I probably broke even on that one. That was a volunteer gig. But anyway,
it was a good experience.
It was amazing. I lived in a hut by the sea. It was delightful. Anyway, but not having to pay rent, right? I didn't go into that much debt. Right. So it's like the rent has really, wages have not kept up with
that. Could be its own podcast.
It's Rachel's doomsday forecast.
Yeah.
But it's, that really is the only reason I'm able to save. And that's, this next year I'm going to save even harder, because this year was like, oh my God, I have money. I can just, I can get what I want at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And it sucks that rent takes that away from people. Like, and I think that's why a lot of people are turning to this lifestyle, because they're like, well, actually, I don't want to just only have money for my house. I want to be able to enjoy what I'm doing and my living and my food and my travels. And, so I think that really goes hand in hand with seeing myself in this lifestyle for the next 5 to 10 years, because it's really the only way I can save. Like, it's, that's it. Just saving money, like not paying rent for the next, however long, so I can pay a mortgage.
Yeah.
Which is, somebody, I think it was even Logan, that posted something about like, oh, so I can't get a loan for the $950 mortgage, so I have to pay a $1,500 rent. Like,
the math in this country is a little backwards sometimes.
Pretty much just keep doing what I definitely feel like I found a stride, and I think I just really want to keep doing what I'm doing. I'd like to visit different places for my off time. So, I'll always come back here, but maybe go internationally when it's a bit safer, and for those countries to have us Americans there.
What advice would you give to somebody who is considering moving into this lifestyle, or like looking at their rent and their bills and being like, how the fuck am I supposed to do this? Or, you from 5 years ago?
I think this is a very common thread, is that it will always take more time and more money than you think.
So get started now.
The advice about saving is hard, because that looks different for everyone. It looks different for your income versus your rent. If you have help from other people, your priorities. Do you really enjoy going out to dinner, and that is important to you, and that you shouldn't feel bad about that. And, I think that there are people like, well, if you just did this, cut out the avocado toast, you would be saving money. And it's
if you just didn't get a latte every day. Like,
right. And I think that's kind of unfair. And I think that you have to figure out what works for your life flow. This very much works for me, because I could not choose between the Northwest and the Southwest. So this was my solution to that. So maybe viewing a move into a vehicle as something that will be helpful in other areas of your life, instead of make other areas of your life harder, because it can do both. If you and some people are forced into their vehicles not by their own choice, and that is a whole other heartache, and there's a lot of hardships that go with that. But if you are trying to do this intentionally, I would ask yourself what your intentions are with it. Is it for a long term, or is it to go explore? Because I definitely, I don't do the national park. I'm a very different kind of I moved into the truck for a very different reason than a lot of people do. And I think knowing exactly why you want to do it will help you also with your build. With your budget. Right? Because I have a very different budget than people who like to go try food everywhere. I like to go to the grocery store. I love going out to eat, but right now it's a little tough. And it's, some people do it as to go experience an area. They want to go do certain things, and that's going to look different for everyone. So I think the best advice I could give is really think about what you want out of it. Does it look nice and you want to go see what other people are doing with this? Mm-hmm. Maybe you should rent a van first, right? Yeah. And then you see, would this work for my life? I know, because
it'll change your life.
It'll change your life. There's so much freedom with it, but there's almost too much.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of responsibility.
Totally, and it's I think just being very intentional if you really do decide to jump fully in to full time. Being very intentional with what that will look like, because I think a lot of people think that the freedom and the mobility and not having the rent looks really great, but logistically, is that going to work for you? And if the answer is yes, you work seasonally and you love to travel and you can live in, then it just, it all adds up and it really works. But do you need to go into the office every day? Do you have children that this might, like, or would your kids love it and they'd be stoked and they're in on it, like, it's just
and like even
so
if you
different.
have pets, like my build and my lifestyle are very
revolved
built
around
around my dog.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
And
yep.
so I know yours are as well.
Yeah.
Yours is as well.
Yeah.
Words are hard sometimes. Rachel, where can people follow you online if they want to see more of your big frickin' truck and Freckles and your adventures?
So I'm mostly on Instagram. I'm pretty responsive on Instagram. It is at Fred the BFT, Fred the Big Fire Truck. So FRED the BFT, or the Big Friendly Truck. I like
truck.
Big fucking truck. I really loved Rob Dahl when I was a kid, so the BFG was like really, he's like my buddy. He's not like other trucks. Like it's not.
No,
he's
I
the
love
friendly
it.
one. But that's more for like the kids when I introduce it. But yeah, it was I came back after buying it, actually sitting at my sister's table, shocked, and do you have a name? I'm like, I don't know, Fred the BFT, and because he's Fred. So Fred the BFT on Instagram, and then I have a website I haven't updated in a long time, but it's called wanderingcamera.net.
And I'll link to all these in the show notes as well.
And that's pretty much it. I'm not on Facebook anymore. I think I'm on the Van Life app. Okay. I don't know. I don't actually log into it very much, but I'm on there, and I've had some people message me through there.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for being
here today.
Thanks
for having me. I love talking about Fred. He's my best friend.
Yeah.
Besides Freckles. It's Freckles and Fred.
Of course, Freckles comes first.
Yeah.
But thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Deliberate Living. If you got value out of this episode, please give it a thumbs up or a 5 stars, whatever it is on the platform that you're consuming it on. If you know someone who could benefit from Rachel's story or who is curious about living in an old hotshot buggy, please share this episode with them as well. If you want to help offset some of the costs that go into making the podcast and keeping this an ad-free, sponsor-free show, I have a Venmo and a PayPal set up linked in the show notes as well. But in the meantime, please come follow us over on Instagram and everywhere else, and tune in next week. Send us any questions you have for future episodes and all of that. So, thanks for subscribing. We'll see you guys next week. Bye! We've reached the end of this episode of Deliberate Living. You can find the show notes and everything we referenced over on my website, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, on YouTube, or sign up for email updates every time something new is published. I'll see you next time on Deliberate Living, and until then, keep your life on the DL too.